Hello, I'm Florencia Ramirez, author of Eat Less Water and the host of the Kitchen Activist podcast. So I'm changing some things up. It's been a while since I've posted an episode, and instead of doing kind of smaller, bite-sized action tips with some interviews sprinkled in, which is what I've done in the previous 90 episodes, I am going to instead try something new and go deeper with people who I see as being at the forefront of the sustainability movement, who are really just doing tremendous things, whether it's in food, in their communities, just people who I know inspire me and I have a feeling will inspire you. Plus, give us some new tips that we can apply right away into our lives, into our kitchens, to just continue to get better at this work that we're all doing together, which is to grow well-being on this planet. So the idea is every last Saturday of the month, I will drop a new conversation with somebody new that I want you to know about. And in this episode, I had the pleasure to interview Dr. Adolfo Murillo, and some of you who've read Eat Less Water might remember him in the Tequila and Water chapter. And he is so He's just great. And not only is he a tequila maker, but he is also a optometrist. He's an eye doctor. He's been my eye doctor, my husband's eye doctor for many years in the community in which I live, which is Oxnard, California. And you are just going to love him as much as I do. He's doing so many wonderful things in the world. Not just in our community here in Oxnard, but in Jalisco, Mexico, and all around Mexico. But I don't. He'll talk about it in this interview. Somebody just recently pointed out to me about how they noticed that the USDA label on his bottles has disappeared on the newer batches, and I asked him about that, but it was off camera when I asked him. But it essentially what's happening is that Mexico is making it really tough for folks to put things like USDA organic labels, and also talking about how their tequila does not have additives, because in the interview you'll also learn how tequila, many of the big brands, in fact probably all the big brands that you know in the tequila world, are using food additives to give it that smoky taste. So it's not coming naturally from soil and the distillation process. So, but he's going to go into all of that. You're going to love this episode. You're not going to see tequila and margaritas in the same way after this episode. I hope you'll look for his tequila. It's called Alquimia Tequila. But let's dig in, grab your cup of coffee, organic coffee, I hope, and let's learn and grow and dig deeper root systems together. Let's go ahead and let's dig in.
Okay.
All right. So I'm actually, when I started thinking about this conversation that we were going to have, I realized it's been nearly a decade since we've had the conversation
Wow.
last.
Can't believe so many years have gone by
I
so
know.
fast. Yeah.
I know. And you really opened my eyes to so much behind, or what's behind the bottle of tequila, right? Like conventional tequila growing and the pressures that they place on rivers in Mexico, on soil health and groundwater levels. And that was 10 years ago. So what I was hopeful is that during this conversation, we can revisit some of those issues that you brought up and find out what is going on these days in Mexico and within the large tequila makers, and also what's happening with organic tequila overall, because I know back then, and it's in the book that you were amongst one of four.
Yes.
So I wondered if that's changed too. But before we dive in to all of that, I just wanted to give a little sense of where I want to head in this conversation. But I want to just get so people can hear your voice about why tequila? Why is your passion tequila?
Well, I'm an optometrist. And someone may ask, what is an optometrist doing making tequila? But if you think about it, it really makes a lot of sense.
It does?
Absolutely. Because Monday through Friday, I help people to see better. And on the weekends, I help them to see twice as good.
Oh my God.
No, the real story is that back in 1993, everything was going beautifully. We were living what we felt was the American dream. I had my private practice set up and it was starting to do well, and that was my dream. My wife Lupe was teaching at the local high school. We had our two beautiful little girls. We had just purchased our dream home.
Which is the one we're sitting in?
Which is where we are sitting today.
Yeah.
And then we got some news that changed our lives completely. We got the news that because my grandparents had passed away, that the ranch was going to be put up for sale in Mexico, our state of Jalisco. And this was a ranch that my grandfather and grandmother had purchased in 1941. And their dream was to work their land, raise their family, do good for their family, and do good things for the community. Mm-hmm. And they did that for many years. But when they passed away, nobody was down there anymore. So the ranch was actually up for sale and there was a buyer. And I told Lupa about it, and she said, no, don't sell the ranch. If you sell the ranch, you're going to be selling your family history, your place of origin. You'll have nothing left.
So tell me, what were your grandparents growing on that land?
So at that time, they were growing mainly corn and raising cattle. This is part of the state of Jalisco. It's on the fringes, so not very conducive to growing other types of crops like row crops or fruits and other things. Mainly, they grew crops that would grow with just a natural rainwater because they really didn't have access to irrigation. And that was what they did. They grew corn and they raised cattle. And my grandmother made cheese, and she was very famous for her cheese, actually. And interesting thing here, when they first purchased the ranch, my grandfather took my grandmother to tour the ranch. They came upon this natural spring, which was part of the main reason why my grandfather wanted to purchase this particular property. And he told her, as long as this spring gives us water, nobody in this community will ever lack water. And
because of the generosity of your grandfather,
yes,
to share his water.
And that's exactly a saying that goes way back. If you have water and if you share it, you'll always have water. But at certain times of the year, during the dry season, a lot of local wells and springs would go dry. And my grandfather's spring always gave water, and he always shared it.
So the water is coming from underground, right? It's the groundwater source.
Water table.
Okay. Because this is desert, this area.
Yes, semi-arid. And in our particular part of the state, we have almost our own microclimate where we have actually much less rainfall and more extremes in weather patterns. So whenever you have access to water, that is very valuable.
So your grandparents purchased that land back in
1941.
1941.
And they worked it, they did very well with it. Among the things that they did for the community, my grandfather taught a lot of the area property owners how to make the most out of their land, how to take care of their soil, and how to make their land more productive. And he also gave a lot of jobs to the local community. And this was a community where there were no jobs, no sources of employment. So a lot of the people there at the time would emigrate up to the U.S., usually most of them in Chicago. In fact, even today, there's more people from our little community living in Chicago than there are in our community, which is called Agua Negra.
I don't think people realize either that Chicago has such a huge Mexican population, unless you live in Chicago.
Yeah, unless you've been there, then you know.
But that surprised me when I lived in Chicago that it was the third largest population in the U.S. of Mexicans.
Yeah, I didn't know that statistic, but it definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of families without a father figure, or a provider. Also, there were no jobs for the women. It's a very conservative, traditional society. and women normally did not go out and work unless they absolutely had to. But there were so many families that without a father, and sometimes even though they were in the US, they would send money when they could, but sometimes they couldn't. And there were a lot of families that were having hard times. When my grandfather would find out that a family was having a hard time, he would assign them a cow. And their duty then was to milk their cow every day. And that way they would have fresh milk for their children every day. And that was just one of the things that he would.
So what were their names?
My grandfather, we call him Papa Avelino, and my grandmother, Mama Nachita. And wonderful people. I had great fortune to be able to spend 2 or 3 summers while I was growing up with them, and just learned a whole lot. And my grandfather had so much to teach, but he didn't vocalize it. He taught by example. And I used to love following him around his ranch, and I could barely keep up with him because he walked so fast. But just watching how he did things and how he interacted with people. And just as I began to grow older, was finding out all the things that he did for the local community. And people still talk about him to this day.
Wow. So he's got quite a legacy. But the legacy is also is within the work that you're doing. So take us now back to 1993. The land goes for sale, is for sale. And what happens?
So again, figured none of us live down there anymore. It's going to be inevitable that it's going to
Because you live where we live in the same community of Oxnard, California, but you grew up in Ojai.
In Ojai, here in Ventura County. And most of the family, my dad's siblings, were also in the U.S. in different parts of the U.S. And so none of our immediate family was down there anymore. And then Lupa said, don't sell the ranch. You're going to be left without your family legacy, your family history, your place of origin. And I said, what are we going to do with it? But she convinced me to convince my dad not to sell it. And he finally agreed on the condition that we would do something with it, that we would take over running the ranch and do something productive with it. And then I came home and told Lupe that he had agreed. And I said, what are we going to do with it now? And she says, you're smart. You'll figure it out. Said, oh boy, what am I going to do? So I started flying down there very frequently to study what we could do. And I wasn't too excited about growing corn. Cattle was okay, but I wasn't excited about growing corn. But each time I flew down there, I would fly into Guadalajara and take a ride about a 2-hour drive east of there to Agua Negra, our ranch. And each time I began to fall in love with the beautiful rolling hills of blue-green agave. And I said, that's what I want on the ranch. But when I started to tell people about it back in Agua Negra, everybody told me, no, it's not going to grow here because nobody had ever grown agave in this community. Why not? We don't have enough rainwater, which I mentioned earlier. We have very little topsoil, extremes in weather patterns, extremes in temperatures, and also our soil is not red. And if you go 20 minutes away, the city of Arandas, which is a big tequila producing hub, their soil is very deep red. And I figured that's red is probably from iron oxide, which is rust. I said, the agave may not need that much iron oxide. So what I did is I took a chemistry kit down with me and I analyzed our soil and compared it to the soil from Arandas. And I looked at the different levels of the major nutrients that agave does need. And ours was quite lacking. So I came up with what we call our organic agave protocol, which is a combination between my grandfather, Papa Avelino's very natural farming methods. And he never allowed artificial fertilizers, toxic pesticides, anything on his ranch. I followed that as an example, but I also incorporated the most modern or the newest in organic soil science from the US and from Europe and came up with our protocol. And then when I was ready, I convinced our foreman, who is still our foreman to this day since 1993, to work with me. And he took a big chance because he's a very hardworking man, in ways very humble, but also very proud of his work. And he took a chance by working with us because he took the risk of being ridiculed by taking on a project that everybody expected to fail. He's actually very loyal to our family because he grew up on our ranch working for my grandfather. And so that I think is what convinced him to go ahead and take his chance. Once we were ready, as our trucks of the small plants came in that we could set out our fields and do our planting, everybody told us that we were crazy,
that you were going to fail,
that this wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
But by then we were ready to institute our organic agave protocol. And after the first year, lo and behold, the plants were thriving, they were growing, they were healthy. And year after year, as we increased the organic activity in the soil, we began to see even better and better results with our agaves.
So in 1993 is when the idea presented itself of really a non-idea at that point, just the idea of keeping the land, of keeping the ranch. And then it then led to the next idea, which was let's grow agave. And so what year are we at now when you actually got them in the ground?
We actually did our first planting in 1993.
Oh, so this is happening pretty quickly.
Very quickly. And agave at that time was taking 7 to 10 years to mature. 7 years later, we were ready for our first harvest in the year 2000. And this was an area where agave was not supposed to grow, but we looked at the results of the harvest, and we were not only able to grow agave, but we actually equaled the output of a really good agave farm in Arandas. And that was just the beginning. As we continued our organic protocol and continued to nurture the soil, all the microorganisms, all the biological activity in the soil, it just became more and more able to sustain agave.
And this is how many acres of land?
The entire ranch is 125 acres.
Oh, this is a huge operation.
And it's not all devoted to agave. Most of it is, but we do have a small section dedicated to pasture land for cows, kind of an homage to my grandfather.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the cows in a moment, but that's amazing. I love that story so much. I don't think I remember I think you gave me more information this time than you did 10 years ago around the background of the legacy of the land and also that timeline. I hadn't remembered either of how people were telling you don't do this, but you did.
We did it partly because, I don't know, maybe we had no other choice or we didn't have many other options. That was what I wanted to do. Our first harvest was in the year 2000. And at that time, just by luck, there was a shortage of agave. So as our first crop was growing, Luis, our foreman, and I would ask ourselves, when it comes time to sell it, who are we going to sell it to? Who's going to come all the way out here to harvest our agave to take in to produce tequila? And we figured, we don't know, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Again, luckily, when the year 2000 came around and our crop was ready to harvest, the agave shortage had hit us probably the year before, which caused the price of agave to go up, but also became very scarce. So all of the big tequila producers were scrambling to find agave to keep up with their production. Prior to that, we weren't even sure if we'd be able to sell it. But when this came around, people started to find out, and we were having people come in from all over Arandas, all the way also from the tequila region, which is about 3 hours away from us, and bidding on we actually had a bidding war for our agave.
In the first harvest.
And that very first one we sold to Cazadores, Tequila Cazadores, which at the time was still owned by the Bañuelos family from Arandas, very wonderful family. But in that bidding war were Don Julio, were some of the other local distilleries. The second harvest, a year later, because we did plant agave every year so we could have a harvest subsequently every year. The second harvest was purchased by Don Julio. They jumped ahead of the ball game and gave us a good bid, and we sold to Don Julio, which at the time was still owned by Don Julio Gonzalez. And our third harvest was sold to Herradura Tequila, which at the time also was still family owned by the Romo family.
So those are two very well-known labels.
Yes.
Now, so your agave is organic and it has been since the very beginning, but these labels are not. So how did that work?
So our organic agave protocol went contrary to probably the way 99.99% of other growers or producers, how they grow their agave. And we wanted to, again, get rid of any use of chemical fertilizers, which are not good for the soil. Eventually, they leave they
Salt.
leave heavy metals and salt.
Mhm.
And with continued use, eventually that land will not produce anymore. We didn't want to use toxic pesticides because, again, that's bad. The workers are out there applying these toxic pesticides with practically no protection, and they're breathing in all of this, and they spray it on the plants, absorbed by the agave plant itself. A lot of that actually goes in all the way through to the final product, which then is bad for the consumer. With what little rain that we have, all of that gets washed down through the soil and ends up in the water table. So it contaminates the water that many times is used by the local population for drinking, for cooking, for washing. And that water is completely contaminated. We didn't want to use weed killers because, again, that's bad for the soil, it's bad for the plants, it's bad for the environment. And we actually like weeds. Weeds are our friends. Rather than killing the weeds between the rows of our agaves, we mow the weeds down, leaving a stubble, which helps us to conserve any rainwater so that it doesn't wash away.
Because it has those root systems.
Yeah, that helps to absorb the water and keep it from running off.
So what about when farmers say, but the weeds are competing for minerals and water from the plant that you want to preserve?
Yeah, there is some competition, which is why we do mow the weeds. We don't let them grow too big. But all of that green material, eventually we incorporate back into the soil. And the more of that green material goes into the soil, the more the organic content of the soil increases. And that is what helps the soil to also absorb and preserve the water.
Because you don't get a lot of rainfall in this area. So you need to conserve every single drop.
Water is precious. Every drop, we want to make use of it. We want to hold on to it as much as we can. And another very interesting thing is that I mentioned earlier that in our area, there's very little topsoil. Fortunately for us, and this isn't everywhere in that little area, but on our particular ranch, a few inches down and you hit rock. But very fortunately, that rock is a sandstone, and sandstone helps to absorb water also and holds it there. So whatever scant rainfall we get, whatever is not immediately absorbed by the soil itself, if it goes down into the rock layer, that sandstone preserves that moisture for us. So it actually extends our growing season longer than a lot of other areas that have more of a volcanic type of rock that does not absorb water.
So maybe you could talk to us about the cattle that you have, because I know they're also very much part of this operation.
They are, and in fact, the cattle actually help us. We call them our organic weed control program. And whenever we do have a lot of weeds, we do let our cattle go through, and they help us clean up those fields. And in return for us feeding them these delicious weeds, they help to fertilize the soil. So
as they're moving around. So it's like this relationship, right?
Symbiotic relationship between us and the cows, in the same way that the agave plants have a symbiotic relationship with the microorganisms in the soil. One helps the other, and everybody benefits. So back to our harvest, by the time our fourth harvest was coming around, and we could see the results each year, our yields were increasing in terms of size and weight, and more importantly, sugar content, which is a direct precursor to the quality of your final product. The higher the sugar content, usually the more flavorful and more complex your flavor profile is going to be. The bricks, we measure it in bricks.
Yeah.
We measure it in bricks units, just like you do the sugar in wine grapes. So each year our bricks level was increasing. Just to give you an example, in a really good harvest in Arandas, if they have a bricks measurement of 20 to 25 bricks units, they're really happy with we're averaging the mid 40s. So almost twice as high in our sugar content.
Wow.
And not necessarily just sugar, but the fact that this agave has created so much sugar, it also is an indicator that it has brought up a lot of minerals and substances from deep within the soil, which also adds to the complexity of the final mineral.
So then are you saying that your tequila is healthy for you?
We've eliminated all toxic substances in the tequila, and in that regard, if you have a choice, I would definitely recommend an organically grown tequila. Also, in the final product, we don't add any artificial sweeteners, artificial flavors.
Is that common these days? Is that a common practice?
It's very common. Unfortunately, it is allowed by the Tequila Regulatory Council. They allow 1% additives, that's what they're called, but 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have a very concentrated artificial sweetener, 1% goes a very long way.
So what kinds of food additives are added?
Artificial coloring and different types of artificial sweeteners, aspartame, and whatever else they can avail themselves of.
I know. I don't know what's going on with this Zoom account. This is a Zoom account I've always used. I don't know so this actually works out because nobody else is on, so we don't have to worry about migrating people over. But so in 4 minutes when this goes out, then we could just hop on to another Zoom link. We'll just take a break and then do that, and then we can just put them together. So it actually worked out that nobody joined us live because I have no idea why that's happening.
I wanted to make sure you
Yeah.
knew, that's all.
Yeah, no, that's good. So let's go from where you're talking about the additives, because I didn't realize it doesn't surprise me. But at the same time, right now I'm staring at a bottle like for the añejo, right? And look at that beautiful color, that gorgeous color. So you're saying oftentimes when we're picking up a bottle of tequila, we're observing the color. We want that color is actually food color or it's an additive.
Sometimes it is an additive, a lot of times it is. And that's why you see such a difference if you compare an añejo or even an extra añejo from one particular brand to another. One brand may have an extra añejo that's much, much darker. And that could be the result of it either being aged longer because it does derive its color from the wood in the oak barrels, but it also could be due to additives. And even though most of our bottles, or most of the bottles that you see on the shelves, that are not some of the more budget-friendly tequilas, they will say 100%.
Put that in there.
They will say 100% agave, which ours definitely is, but it doesn't take into account the fact that the Tequila Regulatory Council allows us that 1% of additives. And I really don't understand, I don't agree with that. Or if it is allowed,
that it should say something on there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It should
Disclose
it to the consumer. The consumer can then decide, I don't care about additives, I'll buy it anyway. Or somebody else might say, no, I want my product to be as pure as possible.
So want to grab the extra añejo. So this has been aged longer. So between these two, look at the color. You see that on the screen? I don't know if you can notice, if you could really see that as much as I can when I'm eyeing it, but I could see that the extra añejo is slightly richer in color. So the añejo was aged in barrels for how long?
So to be an añejo, it has to age for a minimum of 1 year, up to 3 years. And from our very first production, we put it away in oak barrels, and every once in a while we'd open one and taste it and see how it was doing. And then we'd wait a little bit longer, and each time we liked it even more and more, until finally we realized this is almost 3 years old. We better bottle it now, or we're not going to have an añejo, because 1 month more, it would have been extra añejo. So we went ahead and bottled it. This añejo, we normally age it for 35 months in white oak barrels, American white oak barrels. After 3 years, it becomes extra añejo. So we couldn't bottle our extra añejo soon after the 3 years because it would have been too similar to our añejo. And so we did the same thing. We let it go longer and longer and longer, and we kept liking it more and more until it actually aged for 6 years. So twice as long as required to be an extra añejo.
Wow. And the color is coming from the oak barrels, not from the time it's growing.
Exactly. When tequila is first produced, it's very clear like this, which is
like
our
water.
bottle. Like water.
Yeah.
As clear as water. And then once we put it into oak barrels, the longer it stays in the oak, the more color it absorbs from the wood itself, but also the flavor profile becomes more complex as that interaction with the oak brings out certain subtleties in the tequila itself. such as it ages, you start to pick up notes of caramel and vanilla, and then eventually some cinnamon, and then eventually some dark spices. And that's, again, nothing is added. That is all because of the interaction with the wood, and that interaction brings out those subtleties that are actually in the tequila itself already. And that's a result I mentioned earlier about bringing up minerals and substances from deep within the earth. That is what makes up that complexity.
Oh, so there's like this, it's like this conversation that's being had between these different elements, right? Good. And then the soil that comes through with the liquid. And they're just like, it's just this magical alchemy that's happening.
It is absolutely, it's alchemy,
Yeah.
which interestingly is the name of our tequila. And
Right.
we chose the name Alquimia because for a few reasons. One is my favorite book in the whole world is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Yeah.
And that there is an alchemist in his book, but to me, the main theme is follow your dreams, and alchemia has been our dream. Also, ancient alchemists dedicated entire lifetimes to create gold, and they never could. And we like to say that we created liquid gold.
Yeah, The Alchemist is a book I love too, and I reread it every couple years. I reread it this year. But he talks about it's not the follow your dreams. What is it that he talks about in the book with the shepherd, where you have your personal, is it your personal legend? That's how he frames it, right? It's your personal legend, and it's not easy, right? It's not an easy path. And there's so many things that test you along the way before you actually complete this personal legend. And do you feel like that's what this has been for you?
Absolutely, because just like the main character in the book, he set out in search of
a treasure.
A treasure, and he went through this whole ordeal for years, probably. I don't know what the time frame was. And then he went through all of this just to find out that his actual treasure was way back where he began.
Yes.
And I identify with that very much because I was actually born on the ranch that we're farming today with agave. Came to the US. Again, we were living what we felt at the time was the American dream. I had the opportunity to go to school. I had my practice. And then without planning, this opportunity came up for us to go back. And I went back to my place of origin, the place that I was born, and there was my treasure.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. But within that, you're still on your personal legend. It's still shifting and growing and deepening. Do you feel like you've already completed the legend, or do you think that there's still more to read?
I'm not sure if what we're doing is my personal legend. I see it as a continuation of Papa Belino's dream. My dad continued it, and I see ourselves, my family and I, as the custodians of that dream. And it's our duty then to keep carrying that dream on and keep doing things according to how my grandparents would have done things. And granted, we changed the whole thing by growing agave and making tequila rather than what he did. But I think that that's just part of, that's how we came upon this way to be able to continue that dream. And hopefully that dream will continue. I'm hoping my daughters will carry that on, and they may take this whole thing in a completely different path, and that's okay.
Yeah. So you stopped selling your agave to other labels and then made the decision to have your own label. That was a big move.
And that was a huge move. When our fourth harvest was coming around, we realized this agave is getting too good to sell to other producers because they may or may not appreciate what we do and how we grow our agave.
Because they're mixing it with other crops.
It would have gone into this huge production.
Yeah.
And what we have done with our agave would have been lost. So we decided maybe it's time for us to create our own brand of tequila and using only our own agave, and then have a product that we can use to further broadcast the need to return to more natural farming methods.
Mhm.
Because all of this time that we've been doing this, that we've been growing our agave, we were also teaching other growers how to do the same and how to make their own land more productive, not just in agave in our region, but we also, Luis, my foreman, and I also traveled throughout several states in Mexico, including Michoacan, and we converted a lot of avocado growers to our methods. In Guanajuato, strawberry and citrus growers. In Sinaloa, tomato growers. And we did it all for free on the understanding that once they see the results in their own crop on their own land, that they then turn around and teach others how to do the same.
To pay it forward.
Exactly, because we can't do a whole lot by ourselves. But if we recruit others in this way, and they recruit others, then eventually we will reach a point where we'll really begin to make a difference as our numbers grow and as more and more people commit to do things which I feel is the right way.
Do you feel like your tequila or the way that using your organic protocols and building soil health has made you more climate resilient?
As far as
Like with more extreme weather I would imagine that has weather become more extreme since we've had this conversation 10 years ago?
it absolutely has, because, excuse me, when we had this conversation 10 years ago, agave at that time was taking 7 to 10 years to mature.
Uh-huh.
And during that time, from that time to now, we have noticed that agave is beginning to ripen sooner. And there's a lot of agaves now that are ripening at 5 years, which is a huge change in that short amount of time. And I attribute it directly to climate change, because we used to have very predictable weather patterns. The rains start in May or June. They stop in usually September. Things start to dry out, and then it gets cold, and then it becomes drier still, and then eventually the rains come back again. Now, the rains sometimes will be late by 1 to 2 months. Then sometimes they start and then they stop, and then it gets cold, and then they start up again, and then sometimes they last longer into the fall, or excuse me, and then it might get hot again, and then it'll get cold, and it's just totally different weather patterns. And so agaves are very sensitive to their surroundings, and when they experience what they think is maybe 4 or 5 different seasons, they think that they're older than they are, because
I wonder if that's happening to humans too.
It could be. So then they reach a point where they think it's time to ripen, and the ripening process begins. And we have seen that change, and it's a very pronounced change.
So tequila makers, wouldn't you like that?
Most tequila, let's start with the growers of agave. They would like that because they would have more frequent harvests. However, in that short amount of time, agave doesn't grow as much as it normally would before it begins the ripening process. So you actually get a smaller yield, more frequent yield, but smaller yield.
So in some ways, then overall, if you're talking about, say, a 30-year period, you have less.
At some point, you end up with
right?
Yes, a smaller yield. And again, I believe that if you're growing agave for that shorter amount of time, and again, based on these chemical protocols that they use, the quality is not going to be as good. I feel that it's not going to be as good. In our case, we're down to about 6 years. And we monitor very carefully our sugar content and everything else that is available to us. And we have not seen a drop off in either our sugar production or the health of our plants, any other factor that might affect the quality of our tequila. We attribute that directly to our organic protocol.
Wow. So that's a big change. It's a big change in the 10 years.
That is.
Yeah. I wondered if there has been a change when we spoke before, you opened me up to what was happening to Mexican rivers as a result of the distilleries that are lined up on the banks of the river and the illegal dumping of a byproduct, the vinaza, is that how you say it, vinaza, directly into the river. So I don't, if you could talk to us about what that is, what is the vinasa and what is happening? Is if things have improved or have gotten worse?
So the vinasas, that's one of the byproducts of tequila production. And it's a liquid form. It's what's left over after you distill the tequila. And it's a liquid form again, but it contains a lot of waste products. Sometimes it's actually quite toxic because it contains all of the parts of the distillation process that we would not bottle in tequila. When you distill, you eliminate the first part of the distillation and the last part of the distillation, because the first part has too much methanol and the last part has a lot of waste products that would alter the quality and the flavor of the tequila. So we normally just bottle what we call the sweet spot in between. Now, if you want as much volume as possible, then you stretch your limits a bit. But then I feel that the quality is not going to be as good because you're incorporating parts of the distillation spectrum that are not as good.
I would imagine the big dogs are doing that, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
But that liquid that's left over, first of all, it's very hot, but also it contains a lot of waste products, and it's also very high in nitrogen. So those vinasas or that liquid should be treated in such a way that you eliminate the toxicity, and ideally you would do something productive with what is left. But that's an extra cost, and a lot of the big producers, rather than absorbing that extra cost and setting up a purification system, they find it much easier to send a tanker truck out to the local river and dump it into the river, which then kills off all of the life in that river itself. And
that's illegal. And that's illegal.
It's absolutely illegal. Sometimes they get caught and they're fined and they're put out of business for maybe a week or so. But the big distilleries take that as just another cost of doing business, rather than as a warning to, hey, we better do something with this. But it contaminates the rivers, eventually adds more to the contamination of the water table. And or sometimes they dump it out into farmland, which again completely kills any biological
in that form, because it's just so intense with nitrogen. And yours would have the high levels of nitrogen too, your vinasa, but it wouldn't have the heavy metals that come from 5 to 7 years of
absorption
of chemicals,
exactly
of chemical fertilizers, and also of
the toxicants and
pesticides,
everything else. So another byproduct of the process is the fibers. The center core of the agave plant is very fibrous, and that sometimes is just dumped out in the fields. And if it's that much together, that influences the productivity of the soil. So what we like to do is we set out an area where we set up rows of the fiber, and then over that we pour the vinasas and leave it open air. Usually there's a membrane underneath to keep it from flowing down into the water, into the soil. Eventually, ambient bacteria and some of those chemicals, or especially the nitrogen and so forth, that feed the bacteria, all of that together breaks down the fibers. And eventually, this long mountain of fibers with vinasas poured over them actually becomes a compost. And if we have grown our agave organically, then there's no harmful chemicals in there, and that compost can go directly back into our fields and not add anything that we don't want in there because it's all organic.
So 10 years ago, you were the only one doing that because it's a process that you invented. Has it caught on?
It has caught on somewhat. It's hard to gauge exactly how many are doing it and to what degree. Some producers do like to tout their being environmentally friendly, but they're the same ones that sometimes get caught doing the opposite. It's a matter of, are you really committed to doing this, or is this just for show?
And how many producers are organic now?
When we spoke 10 years ago, I think there was 4 of us. Of those original 4, we're the only one still left. And there's a few others that have come about more recently. Hopefully they're doing a very comprehensive organic protocol. That is our hope. Now, around our area, we have converted a lot of agave growers to our organic protocols. And a lot of them are small landowners. And we taught them how to do everything the way we do. Sometimes our crew goes out and does the work for them. And they too took a risk in following our lead, but there was a payoff for them because when it came time to sell their crop, the buyers could tell this crop was of higher quality. And so that gave them a higher price for their crops. They're very happy about that. Then after that, their neighbor might find out, hey, why did this guy get such a good price and I don't? It's because of organics. And so that kind of gets the ball rolling again as we convert more and more.
How much land do you think you've converted?
Oh, that's really hard to say. I couldn't even begin to estimate. But I like to think that we're making a big dent, big enough so that it's going to, at some point, get really big.
I wonder if that is your personal legend.
That could be. What's interesting about that is that we don't always know what our mission is or what our legacy is going to be, except to do what you do and do it well. And then somewhere along the line, it's gonna become more apparent.
Because going against what is the mainstream is certainly hard.
Yes.
It is hard. And you're doing it. And you said you're the only one who survived of those four, which makes me sad too, but also speaks to your commitment because it's not that it hasn't been hard.
It hasn't been, first of all the criticism we got originally for doing something that wasn't supposed to be done in that area. Now, if you look around Agua Negra and all the fields are covered with blue agave, as the big producers found out that you can grow agave here. And my foreman Luis has actually gone out to several of them, introduced himself, and offered to share what we have learned with them so that they can also produce good agave in that area. And he's been shunned by their agricultural engineers because they feel that they have been in the business much longer. We're newer. What are we going to teach them? But eventually they find out that maybe they should have listened to us. So whenever they harvest their crops and they're not getting the results that we're getting, and things like that help us to convince people. And usually people have to see or experience for themselves. And then our hope is that they will learn from that and make those changes necessary.
And taste for themselves because your tequila continues to win prizes and it's a blind taste test, right? Around the world. How many are you at now? Do you know?
When we first started, we wanted to enter our tequila in very well-known competitions. And there are the two biggest and most prestigious competitions are the San Francisco World Spirits Competition and the Chicago Beverage Testing Institute. And right from the get-go, for example, our first importation of our tequila was in December of 2007. By that spring, we had won our first gold medal.
Wow.
And then that fall, at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, that fall, we won another gold medal at the Chicago Beverage Testing Institute. Ever since then, we have won multiple gold medals, sometimes double gold, sometimes best in class. We have won, I think, 4 platinum medals, and I think we're up to about 75 gold and above medals. We actually don't count, here and there we'll get a silver medal. We receive them quite gladly, but we don't add those to our total.
You're only interested in gold because this is alchemy. This is alchemia, right?
We created gold, so that's what. And I mentioned platinum medals. So our very first production of our tequila was in 2004. And we didn't bottle it right away because we wanted to have an añejo once we started to import our tequila. After 3 years, during that time, we got all the licenses, all the permits in Mexico and the US, our labels approved in Mexico and the US, everything that we needed to do in both countries. And finally, at 3 years is when we started bottling, which was 2007. And then eventually we brought along our extra añejo when that turned 6 years old. And then we just got very busy doing all of this and promoting our tequila and everything else. And then one day I was down at the warehouse at the distillery, and I remembered we have a number of barrels that we set aside that aren't opened yet. And at that time, they had been sealed for 14 years.
Wow.
And I climbed up or I had one of the guys climb up and take a sample for me from one of the barrels.
Because you didn't know if it was still going to be good.
Exactly. That's a very long time.
Yeah.
And normally what happens with tequila, because of the influence of the oak, after a certain amount of time, we can what we call over oak the tequila, where it begins to lose its agave character and begins to taste more like a whiskey, which is very oaky compared to most tequilas. And so that was my fear, is that it's not going to be even taste like tequila anymore. So we brought down a sample from one of the barrels, and I tasted it straight out of the barrel, and it was at higher proof. We barrel our tequila at a higher proof or higher alcohol content than when we actually bottle it. So I tasted it right out of the barrel, and I was just amazed. I said, "This is spectacular." And I said, let's bottle this just the way it comes out of the barrel. We're not going to bring this down to 80 proof. And it was at 100 proof in the barrel. So let's bottle it right out of the barrel. Do minimal filtration, but I want all of this flavor to stay in there and not be diluted by bringing it down to 80 proof. And so that was our 14-year
Wow.
extra year.
It's like molasses color.
It's immediately it began to win platinum medals. So in its first 4 years, it won 4 platinum
But
medals.
how many bottles do you have of that? That's probably very,
So it's
very limited.
It's a limited production. It's not our highest seller because obviously it's at a higher price because of the investment of all the time in the barrels. Also, during that time, we lost a lot of product to evaporation. And usually each year we lose about 10% to evaporation. After 14 years, that's a lot of tequila that we've lost. What evaporates, we call that the angel's share. And we have very happy angels in that Andes Jalisco because of,
Is that something that everybody says in the tequila world, or is that something specific to you?
I can't take credit for making that up. I only made up the happy angels part of it, but it is known as the angel share in general.
Oh, I like that very much. So I wonder if we should turn this over to a tequila margarita, a margarita demonstration.
I think we should do that.
Yeah, let's
perfect.
do that. I'm here with Don Adolfo, who is a tequila, he's a farmer or organic farmer of agave and is a tequila maker of one of only how many tequilas that are organic?
Organic at this point, there's probably 5 or 6 that are.
That's all.
That's all. But that's actually 4 or 5 more than there were 10 years ago because three of those 4 are no longer organic.
But you persist. You're an organic agave maker, grower, and also a tequila maker of Tequila Alquimia. And he's going to teach us how to make a delicious margarita. But one of the things that really surprised me, and not in a good way, is because I'm looking at this tequila right now and I could see all the color, and I hope it comes through. I don't know if you can see that. The color of the anejo, and then this is the extra anejo, and then there's the extra
super duper,
the super duper, which is like molasses. Can you see that? The color. And it turns out that much of the color when you purchase a bottle of tequila is actually food coloring. When it's because they allow 1%.
1%, even though a tequila on the label might say 100% agave or 100% puro de agave, the Tequila Regulatory Council allows us 1% of additives. And that might not sound like a lot, but when you add in 1% highly concentrated artificial sweetener, that goes a very long way. And they add to that artificial coloring, artificial flavoring, artificial vanilla, glycerin, all those things are actually allowed, and which, if that's what the law states, I guess that's fine, but we would like it to be a normal thing for us to include that on the information.
It should be. It absolutely should be on the label, and that's something that we as consumers can ask for, so we can make a decision. Do I want this tequila with all these food additives? Because at this point, there's no transparency, right? You're given it's the impression that I'm picking up this bottle and I'm spending more for this color, And I'm actually getting more food additives essentially to get that color.
Exactly. And some people, it doesn't make a difference for them because that's what they want to drink and that's fine, but that's their decision. And somebody else might want the purest product possible, and then they're going to look for the one with no additives.
And the reason we're having this conversation right now is because, one, it's Earth Week, and what you've been doing to foster well-being on the planet is just tremendous, both for in Mexico with the conversion of mentoring many farmers so that they can convert without even charging them. And he's mentoring these farmers to convert from their conventional practices to organic practices. So this is a fabulous way for us to toast to the earth with this margarita that he's going to make for us today, but also because we're approaching the biggest tequila day of the year, which is Cinco de Mayo, right?
Cinco de Mayo.
So I want you to have enough time so that when you make the decision of what bottle to pull off the shelf or which margarita to ask for, or to start asking for organic tequila in your margaritas when you go to bars. Because that's what I do actually every time. I ask for what organic do you have? And oftentimes there's none. But if they hear us asking for us as consumers, if they hear us, then those bartenders eventually start telling the owners, hey, people keep asking for organic tequila, or people keep asking for tequila alquimia, because I'll ask specifically for yours too. So those things matter because we can merge our influence, absolutely merge our influence and make a difference from the consumer point of view, like from that consumer power that we hold.
Absolutely. And many people think, what can I as a person do to promote, in this case, organic farming or more natural ways of producing our food? But actually, each one of us has a tremendous amount of power, and that lies in the power of our wallet.
Yes.
Because the big corporations, their business is to sell product to you. And if you're demanding a certain type of product, eventually, like you said, they're going to catch on and they're going to know that there is a demand for organic products. And we would hope then that they would start either producing or carrying those products.
So the food additives, so this has no food additives. It has no chemicals from the production or from the growth of the agave plant, which can take anywhere between 5 to 7 years. So that's a lot of chemical layer on that plant if you're purchasing a conventional bottle. And then plus, I know that there's also the heavy metals that are involved during the distillation process for the big dogs who are most of the tequila that we're purchasing, is that they want to supercharge the time or really shrink the time that it takes to distill tequila, because time is money from that profit capitalist point of view, right? So instead of taking, how long does it take normally to distill tequila?
To the fermentation, normally, if you do it all naturally, normally takes up to a week, up to 7 days. Now, if you supercharge it, like you said, they actually add chemical fertilizers, urea or ammonia-based chemical fertilizers to the fermentation tanks. What that does is it supercharges the yeast to break down the sugars and convert into alcohol. But another byproduct of that is heat. And if you put your hand on a fermentation tank for regular natural fermentation, it does feel warm or sometimes even hot. But when you supercharge the yeast with these chemicals, it becomes so violently hot and active that they actually have to wrap these tanks in cooling jackets so that to keep them from exploding.
Oh.
And whatever they do add in this urea, these chemical fertilizers, actually carries on and through the distillation process and ends up in your final product.
And it's petroleum based too, right? These chemical
petroleum byproduct.
Yeah. So it's fossil fuels.
Yeah.
It's fossil fuels in your tequila or
And
your
we use
margarita.
only solar power to grow our agave.
Yeah, the whole thing, the whole story. And I hope you listen to the whole story if you become a member of the Kitchen Activist Collective. And also I write about it in the book Eat Less Water.
Yes.
In the tequila and water chapter. I highly recommend you read that. And the recipe for this margarita is in there as well. What I love about your recipe for margaritas is that the margarita mix that we have all grown up with and that they often use when you go to a bar, right, or Mexican restaurant, has a lot of high corn fructose syrup and a lot of other additives and a lot of to give it that color that I don't know why that's a good color that margarita mix like
neon
neon like a highlighter color. So you don't have to, you could bypass all of that. You can make some fresh, everything is fresh, right? It's all fresh. I see, are these tangerines?
That's a surprise.
Oh, so tangerines, lime, and then of course tequila that is
organic
completely pure. Oh, and then an organic fair trade agave as well. So I'll let you do your thing. Show us how to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And you mentioned that in the book you did include our margarita recipe, and we're very appreciative that you dedicated a whole chapter to our tequila project in your book, which is, if you haven't read it, highly recommend it. Pick one up. You'll love Eat Less Water. This makes you think about things that many of us are not even aware of, and the things that we can do in our kitchen preparing our food for our families that will make a difference. So please do. And so today I'm making for you our margarita, and I have a special surprise for you. I'm going to tweak the recipe a little bit, but let's see how it turns out. So we always like to start out with fresh squeezed limes. If you can, these are organic limes, so in keeping with our whole concept here.
Right, from start to finish.
Absolutely.
From plant to glass.
As Lupa says, from cultivation to distillation.
Yes, Lupa is his wife, the co-partner in all of this.
Actually, she's the beauty and the brains behind the whole project, and I just do the work.
I think it's important I know that for some people, I know for a long time I didn't do this the right way. You have, because it's counterintuitive, is when you cut it in half, you actually put it reverse of what you think it is to squeeze it out. Anyways, that's just a little tip.
That's a good point. We squeeze out these limes, only natural, because I hate using artificial ingredients in my margarita.
And you know what? That lime that you buy in the plastic bottle, it doesn't have the same flavor at all of something that's
it doesn't
a natural squeeze.
No, not at all. Part of it is the fact that it has preservatives, chemical preservatives, to keep it from going bad, and that doesn't make it taste as good.
Plus the leaching also of plastic in the
all of that together. And all those artificial sweeteners and some of those mixes, that adds to the reason why you get headaches. Because if you're using a purely made tequila, if you drink only that tequila, you should not have a headache or a hangover the next day, within moderation. Now, if you go and mix this,
I've tested that.
If you go and mix this with a store-bought bottled margarita mix, and you've got artificial sweeteners in there and flavorings and who knows what else, you're taking away from the natural qualities of the tequila, and that is why you end up with those bad headaches.
Okay, so this will make how much?
So we're making enough for about 2 small size margaritas.
Okay, and you put, how much ice did you put? You put
about
1
a scoopful.
Okay, about a scoopful of this.
Okay, so I put in 2 ounces of lime juice. My surprise today, we normally use orange juice to take the edge off of the lime. Today I have a special surprise. We're using tangerines, and these are 100% organic. And I know that because we just picked this from our
Oh,
in the backyard.
from your own
From our own
fruit
tree.
trees,
So,
your little orchard back there.
so
I love that.
we not only grow our own agave tequila, we also grow our own
Your own tangerine.
tangerines. And we actually have a lime tree as well, but
And the color is gorgeous. I can see
it
the
is,
color.
yeah.
That's also something we get to do here in Oxnard.
The weather allows us to
Yep.
grow all of these wonderful things pretty much year round.
Yeah, but if you're not so familiar with Oxnard, it's the center of the universe. At least I think so.
So now we'll add our tangerine juice, a little bit less than the lime.
Okay, so this is a shot glass, a little bit less than a shot of tangerine juice, a shot glass of lime.
And then we're going to add, as a sweetener, we don't want to use sugars or high fructose corn syrup or anything. We like to use organic agave sweetener, and we have here organic fair trade agave. So we've cut back a little bit on this Florencia from the original recipe.
That's in Eat Less Water.
Yes.
So what did we say in that recipe?
I think in that one, we had a full shot. We'd cut that back to about half a shot.
But if you did the full shot, because I've tried that recipe many times, and it's delicious.
Okay, good.
It's delicious.
And then a little bit of water.
But if you're trying to cut back on some of the sugar in your diet, as we all could tell you.
Yes. So this isn't necessarily a skinny margarita. I like to call this a slim margarita.
What, a skinny or a slim? I don't think I don't know.
Yeah, skinny would be less sugar still.
Okay.
Or less sweetener still. Okay. So we got all, those are the only three ingredients we put in here. Lime juice, either orange or tangerine juice, and organic agave sweetener.
You could also use a grapefruit, right?
You could, maybe make it a little more complex. Grapefruit, maybe even lemon. You could have fun experimenting with different blends of citrus juices. As long as they're all freshly squeezed, if possible, organic.
Yeah.
You could have fun experimenting. And
you really didn't shake a whole bunch there.
well, yeah, I'm not that good at shaking. A lot of practice. So I'm going to have the honor of serving your margarita in these beautiful glasses that you gifted me this morning.
Let me share the glasses. And I thought it would go perfect because this is a Moroccan, it's also fair trade, and it is a recycled glass from their bottles, like from beer bottles. And this, we didn't talk about at all, but I know that the glass that you have for this is a gorgeous bottle, is also recycled glass.
It's also, we use only recycled glass in our bottles. It takes a little bit longer. It's a little bit more expensive process, but this is in keeping with our entire green theme. Okay.
Okay, wait, so did you ever put the tequila itself in there?
Oh my God. I told you I was out of practice. That would have been a really skinny margarita. Good thing somebody's paying attention.
I'm gonna pay attention to that for sure. Okay, so it's
a shot of tequila.
And you're using the Blanco.
We're using the Blanco because for me, the flavors, the natural flavors in the Blanco tequila, which is a floral quality, a little citrusy, a little bit of a white pepper in the flavor profile. I feel that melds very well with the citrus juices. Some people prefer aged tequilas, and then other people think that the more expensive tequila is going to make you a better margarita. And usually because the more you age the tequila, the more expensive it becomes. But that's not necessarily so because the aged tequilas have a lot of the oak influence, which to me, that oak flavor does not go well with the citrus juices.
Okay,
so
because it's like a heavier, you want the lightness.
You want the lightness, you want it to really go well together. And
also that the extra anejo or the anejo, you just want to sip. You just want to sip in a glass and really just feel or just taste them.
You want to get as much out of that flavor profile and enjoy it as much as possible.
Yes. So the Blanco looks like water.
Okay,
All right.
try this again.
That was funny.
Mhm.
Have you had breakfast yet?
No.
Yeah, so this is our breakfast this morning. Have you had margaritas for breakfast before?
During
Or is
the,
that getting too personal?
no, during the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Now yeah, I don't know if this is going in a good direction.
Actually, it's not bad. My daughter Eliana was contacted by a company that asked us if we would do because they were running out of things to do after work or something fun for their staff. So they asked us if we would do a tequila tasting for them and a margarita demonstration. So we said, sure. But this company was based in Amsterdam and they had offices in London, Amsterdam, I think Singapore and Paris, and I don't remember what else, what other countries.
Different time zones.
So a completely different time zone. So we were up at 8:30 doing tequila tastings and making margaritas. But just so that we could join them in the toast, we actually cheated and we took an empty bottle of Blanco and used water. So we actually just put water in our margaritas.
Maybe that's what you were trying to do.
I might have been.
Since this is our breakfast.
So,
All right.
so salute to all the wonderful work that you have been doing. Your amazing book, Eat Less Water, and I know you have a project coming up.
The Kitchen Activist.
Kitchen Activist,
yeah.
And teaching us how we, as consumers, as normal everyday family people, the things that we can do to make our world a better place.
And thank you for the work you're doing, going
Thank
after
you.
your personal legend.
So,
Food. Oh.
I like that.
That is very dangerous territory. It feels like, especially since it's the morning and it's breakfast, I feel like, oh, I'm just drinking a juice.
Yeah, well, people have mimosas for breakfast all the time.
That's true. That's true.
So
But
a slim alquimia margarita.
it is phenomenal.
Thank you.
It is phenomenal.
And
so good.
well, the presentation in these beautiful glasses.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Michael, come over here so you can have some. This Michael's been over here, over on the side. Yeah. Yeah.
We got the seal of approval.
All right. So I think that'll do it. So just to recap how you make this margarita, what happens if you don't have a shaker?
People are very inventive as far as how to shake things. So
Okay.
you can put it in a large container, a larger, let's say a pitcher, shake it around, swirl it as long as it doesn't overflow, or even stir it with a wooden spoon. You can think of ways to.
Oh, I guess even in a coffee mug.
In a
right?
coffee mug.
Like a travel mug.
Yeah, you can put the lid on it and shake it.
Yeah,
that'll work.
okay.
In fact, it'll keep it nice and cold for you.
Oh, that's really good. Okay, so some kind of shaker.
No wonder they have those cup holders in cars.
And then a shot glass of fresh lime, and a scant shot glass of
about 3/4 of either orange juice or
tangerine.
We changed it up
some
today
other citrus.
With the tangerines, and we were talking about experimenting with grapefruit and different types of citrus.
Yeah.
And different combinations.
Blood orange.
Yeah.
Blood orange
would be, blood orange. And then see what you like best, or just change it up from one weekend to the next.
And then 1 scoop of the ice.
Get it nice and cold.
A shot glass of Blanco. Agave.
Half a shot glass of agave
sweetener.
Or if you like it sweeter still, you can.
Or honey.
Or honey, you can use honey.
You can use honey too.
Or what about using the reposado?
You can use reposado.
It's not too oaky.
Yeah, it's not too oaky. I wouldn't go any more aged than that. But the reposado would still go well, and the oak wouldn't overpower anything. So
reposado is my favorite of all of yours.
Yeah, I know that's been your favorite.
It's been I've been consistent for the last 10 years.
Good.
And then, one thing before we go, I do notice that you didn't put any salt around the rim. Why? Because I know there must be a why.
I personally have cut back a lot on salt, but also I think that the salt takes away from the flavors themselves. And if you really want to appreciate what was in there, the contents, of your margarita, I would recommend without salt. But then if that's your preference, that's okay.
Because I do think, as you're saying that, like when you have, say, a good piece of bread or a good piece of meat or anything that has been cultivated with the care that you put into, like how you put into this tequila, you want to be able to taste it. You don't want to have it hidden by other flavors. But on the other hand, if you have something that has poor quality, right,
Then you want
to mask it with a sauce.
Yeah.
With slather with butter, or in this case, put the rim with salt, right?
And some people get very inventive with it. They use salt or tahini, a seasoned type of salt.
And if you're just drinking it with that margarita mix, you do need that salt because it's not, otherwise it's really not that good.
Yeah.
But this, absolutely, you need no salt. This is divine. Divine.
I'm glad you like it.
Yes.
I'm glad you like this is the first time I've actually made it with tangerines.
That's a keeper, for sure. It's a keeper.
We'll keep growing.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
I toast to you, to Earth Day.
To Earth Day.
And consider
success to you.
Oh,
and
how do you find your tequila before?
You can ask for it at your local liquor store or restaurant. The surest thing is to go on our webpage, alquimiatequila.com, and find one of our local or one of our online retailers. There's a retailer in San Diego called Old Town Tequila.
There's a lot of, you can't really see it off of that.
And they actually ship all over the country. Interestingly, they ship a lot of our product to the East Coast. Apparently, we have quite a following over there, all due to the magic of social media.
I can see why people know they're good cocktails on the East Coast, for sure. Yeah, so you can find it alquimiatequila.com, and that's spelled ALQUIMA.
I at the end.
Alquimia. So it's alchemy in Spanish.
Exactly.
It's alchemy in Spanish. So you'll find it easily. And thank you so much for sharing all of what you do.
Keep doing all the good work that you do.
Salud to you too.